Go back around to me and leave off. Like I said, I've taken these videos and tried to break them down so I don't bore you to death. It's one long one. The reason I showed the stairs is, as I mentioned in the first video, the physician had given me a profile. I couldn't climb ladders, stairs, or be on uneven ground. This is my house and it's got stairs, which I've fallen. Well, what I do is I climb up on all fours like a toddler crawling, and then I slide butt down to get down. Sometimes it gets going faster and I go right on out on the floor. I got 13 times, broken 2 or 3 teeth. That's how I injured my back I mentioned earlier. And a few other injuries. Oh, my knee. Tore my tendons on my left knee. So I went to, like I said, the agency's supposed to be helping me. So I went to the Department of Labor, Workman's Comp, Federal Workman's Comp. When you look in your phone books, if you look under lawyers, you'll see hundreds of lawyers that say Workman's Comp. But usually in parentheses it says state, which means federal is so complicated. No one besides a gentleman in Philadelphia and San Diego will actually handle it. Anyway, I went to them and I said, hey, I need one of these little elevator chairs so I can get up safely up and down my stairs. And the way they work, they send you to what's happening. The first physician tells you what's wrong, which the first doctor told them that and told them I needed that. So then they send you to a second opinion. Well, they sent me to 7 second opinions, and every one of them said the same thing. The 8th guy refused to see me, saying he had read all the stuff. They'd already answered a question. Obviously, they didn't want to hear it. They finally found a gentleman over at Chesapeake Hospital in Chesapeake, Virginia, who told them I didn't need a chair. So that's the one they bought off on. And I went back and said, well, once again, you know I can't climb stairs. How do I get up and down? Never got an answer. In fact, they refused to answer me because this is the way they act. And then I found out there was a guy named Joseph Perez, P-E-R-E-Z, who testified. I think he was one of their officials who testified in Congress about workman's comp, federal workman's comp. In the middle of his testimony, he decided to tell the truth, which got him fired. But basically backs up everything that, you know, myself and hundreds of other federal employees do. They don't want us to go back to work. They don't want to pay us. They don't want to pay our medical bills. They don't want to do anything. They sit on their butts and use annotated regulations that you would never believe. Like I said, 8 second opinions. Really, 9 second opinions. And by the way, any of you, when you go to the other website that's referenced here on YouTube, if you want to see the documentation, I'll be glad to give it to you. I've sent it to George Allen, my first senator, who was quite perturbed, and they actually were getting somewhere when he lost his office. The next senator, Jim Webb, has not been quite as cooperative. I've provided him documentation with the agency. The way this works is when I was working, I filed EEO complaints, which we all hear about. Well, it seems that when you're a certain rank or a certain person or a certain job description, your testimony is not questioned. So I would say, hey, the agent with this office is not in compliance. Here's some examples. They'd come back and say it was. The case would be dismissed. You can appeal that, which I did, to Washington. Washington would go and ask them, and they would say, yes, it's in compliance, and they would drop it. That was all I could do. So when I left, George Allen's office, Senator Allen, told me that, why don't you go to the U.S. Access Board and get them to evaluate it? That way another government agency. So they did. So last July 2007, I got a copy back. They agreed with me. I supplied a copy to my agency and a copy to Senator Webb now, and said, look, somebody was mistaken. The office is not in compliance. Somebody's, you know, just been misinformed. Well, they wrote, the agency wrote Senator Webb and said, oh, our officers are in compliance. Just used old letters. They didn't bother reading this new report that says that it's not in compliance. So I kept arguing and arguing. And I asked Senator Webb, I said, you know, I'm not looking for blood here. All I'd like you to do is just, here's proof. You know, in their writing it says that they are. Here's an agency that says they're not. You know, get another evaluation and prove it to yourself. And I said, you know, I'm not asking for a congressional or you disciplinary anybody, but just go to them and say, are your offices in compliance? And if they're not, you get them in compliance. Well, Senator Webb has, you know, elected not to do that, and no action's ever been taken. But we have offices where we had a young lady in a wheelchair, and they would have to lift, two people would have to go with her to the restroom and lift her onto a toilet so she could go to the bathroom, because that officer was not in compliance. We had offices where a guy with emphysema was placed in a facility that became overcame with gases and had to go in the hospital. And there's, you know, I'm not going to go on, but when you're disabled, you start talking to people who are disabled, and you find out there's at least 50 cases I know of throughout DCMA, and I'm sure there's more that I haven't been privy to. But these people, you can't go to your supervisor or your career is over, as I found out. They don't want to hear it. And like I said, what I'm hoping I can do with this is, you know, there's not much you might could. The only way the government takes action is when they're embarrassed or ordered to. And the only thing I can do through this is try to embarrass them enough for them to take action, or to prevent, you know, investigation and finding out I'm telling the truth, and so forth. And what I'd like to do is, like I say, get your, you know, take 5 minutes of your time, make a phone call, write a letter, and if you go to these websites, you'll see what I'm talking about.